At Upscale Audio, we know a lot about powering Klipsch speakers, whether it's Jubilees, K-horns, La Scalas, any of their upper end stuff. We know what to do. And I've told people back in the day, I used to say, you know what? You can take a pair of K-horns and you can run them with a Sony Walkman. I don't have a Sony Walkman here today, but you know what I do have? Is it this amp, or could it be an iPad, an old iPad?
I heard a pistol shoot.
Well, how'd you like that intro? You know, we enjoy having a good time here and playing around with stuff at Upscale Audio, and I told these guys that I could run K-horns with a Walkman, and we didn't have a Walkman, and they thought I was joking anyway, so we made up some adapters and cables, and then we hooked it up to a portable headphone amp, and it actually worked fine. Not amazing, but it worked fine, actually. But then I said, okay, let's do something really crazy. So we went and dug out an old iPad that had a headphone jack. And the guys were shocked to see that what I said was true. Yes, you can run K-horns on an iPad or a Walkman if you have an old time machine. I'm going to make two Klipsch videos. I'm going to make two heritage videos. One of them is going to be the best integrated amps to use, and then this video is going to cover using amplifiers and the external crossover, whether or not you want the external crossover, and whether or not you want to use a preamp with it, or if you can just plug your streamer into it. And then if you do get a preamp, what to avoid. So getting to Klipsch, and while we're talking about this is, look, the beauty of high efficiency is the music can breathe at low levels. And it's true that very few speakers can do this in the way that Klipsch can. Notice that some low efficiency speakers need to be turned up just to get them to breathe. And you guys out there, you know that own them, you know what I'm talking about. It seems like you have to crank them up, and then by the time you get them to breathe, it seems like your spouse is yelling at you to turn it back down. And it is not that way with Klipsch. High efficiency means dynamic range. They breathe, even when they're at lower listening levels. And this video is about squeezing everything that you can out of that characteristic. So let's talk a little bit about the crossover. It's required with these because these are Jubilees. They were designed only to be used with the crossover, but they were so successful that Klipsch went back and redesigned the La Scala and the K-horns to use their own external crossovers that could be added at any time. You could get them right away or get them down the road. And the results have been absolutely epic. So, I mean, it works like this. You hook your preamp or your streamer into the crossover. Then the crossover hooks up to your power amps. In this case, it's a two-way speaker, so we have a power amp for the bottom end and one for the mid-range top end. The best thing about using this crossover is that they use DSP for time alignment and phase coherence. That is a really big deal. I mean, yeah, you get a flatter frequency response, yeah. But the DSP that's built in is a game changer. The other benefit is that you do get a flatter response. But for me, it's the ability to fine-tune the top end and the bottom end separately. I mean, it's really fantastic. You know, you can tweak it out to your room. You can tweak it out to if it's party time or not, just wherever your head is at and what music you're getting onto. So let's talk a little bit about powering these. And I have a letter from a customer, and this dude works at Disney. I guess I can say that. I hope I can. And he inherited a pair of K-horns, and then he bought a very popular 100 watt integrated amp, tube integrated amp. And it was noisy. So he bought expensive vintage tubes from us, hoping that would fix it. and it did not. So he complained, but he did not complain to the dealer that sold him the amp. He didn't complain to the manufacturer that made the amp. He decided to let us know that he wasn't happy. And I told him, I go, look, dude, there's nothing that you can do about this because it's just not a really quiet amp. You know, I said, God, I mean, how did you end up even buying this amplifier? And he said, you know what? I called around and everybody said it was a good idea. Everybody seemed to agree that I needed 100 watts. And I'm like, are you kidding me, man? You can't use more than a few watts with K-horns. You cannot. I mean, even with just a few watts of power, it is going to play so loud that it would end up damaging your ears. So he traded that 100-watt amp in for a 36-watt Prima Luna, you know, the equivalent of like an Evo 300, I guess. And he sent me this letter. And I just want to read just a little excerpt from it because I was so happy for this guy. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. He talks about, you know, why he loves the speakers and they're old and da-da-da-da. And I got that, right? I got it. He talked about the problems that he had. But after he got it, this is what he got his new Prima Luna. He said this: I'm by no means an audiophile expert, but I know hum when I hear it, and this amp doesn't hum. I mean, you have to stick your ear all the way up into the tweeter to get hiss. That would have been worth it all alone. But what I didn't really expect was the huge difference in the music. I still can't find the words. In layman's terms, there is no way, and I mean no way, I would have bought the other brand if I could have auditioned the two. I still cannot believe how different two amps can be. The bass is so much tighter and authoritative. The mids and the highs more musical and clear. The 3D stage and the overall listening pleasure at all volumes is astounding. It's just so smooth and effortless. Like a great athlete, it makes it look easy. How cool is that? I love that. You know, more power doesn't mean a damn thing for better bass dynamics or sound quality, period. Bass response is a matter of bandwidth. In a tube amplifier, bass response is going to be determined by the output transformers. They're the beginning and the end of a tube amp. You can have all the power in the world, but if you're not able to communicate it out of the amp to the speaker, you don't have bandwidth, and you're going to get crappy bass. Output transformers are half science and they are half art, and they are expensive. They are the single most expensive part in making a tube amplifier, and it's where manufacturers cheap out, and it's where they buy them off the shelf. And Prima Luna has never done that. They're one of the very few companies in the world that actually design and wind them in-house, and they're famous for being the best in the market. You know, Klipsch speakers are really dynamic, and to leverage that, you know, dynamic range is the difference between light and dark. You've heard me say that before, and loud and soft. But what you want to do with this speaker is drop the noise floor, drop the noise floor. But it's tough because it's 105 dB efficient. But the way that you do that is with the power supply. And you know, for you to judge that, it's really going to be hard for you. How do you know if something has a good power supply or not? Because you're not an electrical engineer, most likely, but you do have eyeballs. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures real quick here. This is going to be the internal picture of a Prima Luna and a competitive amplifier, we won't say who makes it, that's at the same price. And I suggest to you that when you do your own shopping, you have to do your own due diligence. You have to look at the weights. You have to use Google Images. Type in the model number in Google, go to Images, and look for yourself. Now, some people are going to sell you on this bullshit line of like, well, it doesn't, yes, but this manufacturer is a minimalist manufacturer. And my answers to them would be, why would you charge me more when you're putting in fewer parts? So if you're buying Klipsch speakers that have the external crossover, this is what I would suggest to you. Get the Prima Luna Evo 300 tube power amp. It is for the mid-range and for the top end. It is unbelievable because of the power supply and because of the output transformers and because of the point-to-point wiring, Swiss wiring, TACMAN resistors made in Japan, tinfoil capacitors made in Switzerland, Swiss wiring. It's got the only truly adaptive auto bias system in the world that's adaptive. And you can transform the sound of your system. If you play a piece of music that is a little bit hot on top, you can actually change this from an ultra linear amplifier to a triode amp at the push of a button. See this red light? If I push it, it switches to green. Now you're running in triode. And triode is famous for having all that golden glow that people talk about. And there's other things you can do too, because you can, change the 12 AU7s in the front. You can run different output tubes. Oops, wrong product. That's the preamp. You can run different output tubes. Anything from EL34s up to KT150s. The possibilities are endless. Oh my God. Now let's talk about the bass amp. Now look, you could run a pair of these. You could run a pair of the tube amps, top and bottom. You could run, this is the new Evo 300 hybrid power amp. If it was my system, I would run the tube amp here, hybrid down here. This hybrid is, there's nothing else like it on the planet. Go read what Dick Olsher said about the Evo 300 hybrid integrated amp. It's the same design as this. It is a world apart from any other product. This hybrid amplifier is a double-decker product. On the bottom is an Evo 300 preamp, in essence. And then on the top is one of the best power amp sections you can buy. I mean, it is absolutely bonkers. Now, if these are a little bit rich, it can be done for less. You could run an Evo 100 power amp on the top end of the speaker, or if you're using the three-way system from Klipsch, you could run the Evo 100 on the top and in the mid, and then you could maybe get a good solid-state switching amp to run on the bottom end. Talk to one of my salespeople. We can get you the hookup. But I mean, it can be done for less. But I'm always mindful. I think that sometimes there's people that buy this system that overspend on the electronics because they buy something that is an overpriced brand, and they feel that by doing that it's going to perform better, and it is not. It is not. So be mindful of not overspending on electronics. Take the money and put it into speakers. So, all right, now let's talk about the preamp. If you have a streamer and you don't want to use a preamp, you can do that. As long as your streamer has a really good output section, an exceptional output section, and it has an analog volume control. There's a couple of brands like Esoteric and Lumen, because Lumen uses, Esoteric uses Lumen in their products. So Lumen has something that's called lead processing, L-E-E-D-H. That's something that typically you don't find until you get to products that are $10,000 on up, more likely $25,000, $30,000. But all the Lumen products have lead processing built into them. So that's one good way to get this done without having to buy a preamp. Now, if you want to have a preamp, I would make it a tube preamp. I mean, why bother otherwise, right? I mean, that's how you get all that glory. And if I was doing that, I would make sure that that preamp has about 15 dB of gain or less. And if you don't do that, you could end up having more hiss when it's at idle, or you can obscure detail. Or in some cases, with some preamps that are really poorly designed, and they're out there, you can be prone to having tube noise and an occasional failure. And who needs that? Now, if you want a preamp, make it tube. I mean, why bother otherwise, right? I mean, come on. But if you do that, make sure that you keep the gain low, like 15 dB or less. If you don't do that, you can be prone to have more hiss at idle, or you can obscure detail, or you can end up having tube noise problems and short tube life. So, make sure that, like this system, this thing is whisper quiet with these speakers. These are the most efficient speaker that they make. But we're using a preamp and a preamp. And all of their preamps, they have between 10 and 12 dB of gain. That is textbook. Preamps don't need any gain. Typically, you are attenuating the volume from your streamer and your phono stage or whatever. So having all of this extra gain, because I see some dumb shit out there, having all this extra gain means you got to do something with it, right? But you can end up having problems instead. Preamp and preamps have the holy trinity of tube preamp design. That means dual mono, all the way to the power switch. Go look at a picture. Right down the middle, there's a preamp for that section, preamp for that section, including the power supply. It has point-to-point wiring. In the case of this unit, it has Swiss-made silver-plated oxygen-free copper with a Teflon dielectric. And then they are tube rectified. There's a pair of 5AR4 rectifier tubes here. And that's how you get that real tube glory. That's how you have a real tube preamp. Compare this. This is 52.9 pounds, and it costs around $5,000. Compare it to the competitor's preamp and look inside. I want you to look. $12,000, 16 pounds, uses a chip for a volume control. Forgive me, a pair of chips. It has one for each channel. Compared to that, Alps Blue Velvet potentiometer made in Japan. There is no comparison. I mean, call me out on this, man. Use Google Images. You don't have to take my word for it, and you don't have to be an electrical engineer to understand it. I know down in the comment section that you folks might say, oh, it's just a Prima Luna ad. But you know what? You can take out the Prima Luna name and put in the advice anyway. And, and do your own due diligence for whatever brand fancies you. But I would tell you this. Get something. It's your money, right? Talk to one of my non-commissioned salespeople. They're not going to try it. And ask them the hard questions. And buy something that will inspire you and that will last you for decades. And that's why we always say it, man. At Upscale Audio, we're going to treat your system like it's ours. Thank you.